Hello, everybody. I'm the 100 Proof News Hound, and we're here with another edition of the 100 Years and More show. This time we're going back into the 19th century and going to examine the history of the department store. There was a time when every major and not so major city had a family-run department store that brought the goods of the world to your town. That's almost gone now. It has been replaced by our alien overlord, Jeff Bezos, and his Bond villain wife, who bring all the manufactured goods of China to your front porch with as little human interaction as possible. Didn't always used to be that way, though. It used to be a little more human and a little more humane. Now, remember to like and subscribe the channel here. Now, if you hang around until the end, given the fact this is the 100 Proof News Hound, we're going to show you how to make a Wanamaker milk punch, one of the kings of drinks. It's pretty complicated. You don't need a degree in chemistry to make one, but it does help. But we'll explain that at the end. Now, before we can examine what the history of a department store is, we need a definition. And a department store, well, strangely enough, is one that has departments. It's a store which has a wide selection of goods, and they're presented to the public in different departments, each department representing a type of good. Now, that goes, that's a natural definition. Toys, you have a toy department, a women's wear department, etc. But there's another aspect of department stores that was new and innovative in the 1860s, and that is fixed pricing. Department store wouldn't be the department store unless you had goods that were for sale, offered for sale at a fixed price. Prior to department stores, you basically were haggling over everything. Even in the 1850s and early 1860s, you'd be haggling with the clerk, trying to negotiate a price. It's basically the Turkish bazaar. Department stores changed that and brought into play what we would consider now the modern shopping experience. Now, when did department stores become department stores? When did the normal retail experience become department stores? And you can really define it. It happened all of a sudden. There were two ads, one of them in the Detroit Free Press in November of 1869 and the other in the Pittsburgh Commercial in April of 1870. If we go to the Free Press, the Detroit advertisement, it's the first time that the word department is ever used in a retail advertisement. And here's what it says. Clearing out sale of dry goods commencing Monday, November 22nd. Campbell Linen Company offers the entire stock of seasonable dry goods at panic prices. That's pretty good. Panic prices. Bargains in every department. And that is the first time the word department is used in conjunction with a retail sale. Now, it really gets nailed down the next year in Pittsburgh, April 25th, 1870. And it's the way that the gentleman is to set up his store and the way he's describing it that really leads you to conclude that it is the original department store. Free excursions to the finest show in the city. D.W. Evans one-price department variety store. It's calling it a department store. Just opened in Pittsburgh at number 59 Fifth Avenue. He opens today with a new feature in the retail business world, which is to be known as Evans One-Price Department Variety Store. Every article of merchandise at this establishment is classified according to price. Otherwise, the entire stock is divided into lots and each placed in a separate department. First time a store has been subdivided like this. These departments are conspicuously labeled, and any person, even a child, may know the price of thousands of dollars worth of goods at a glance. Notice it's not the Turkish bazaar. We got fixed prices here. Visitors will not be urged or even asked to purchase, as the proprietor prefers to offer a little of everything, useful, ornamental, and valuable, at prices that sell themselves. In other words, to make the department store the headquarters for bargains. That's an ad that could have come right out of the 1970s or 80s, but it was here in 1870. And that is, in fact, the origin of the department store. Now, we could shut it down there, but that wouldn't be much fun, because department stores had to come from somewhere. And the retail experience was growing throughout the 1820s, 30s, and 40s with the expansion of the middle class in America. And we're going to walk you through what the progress that was made in retail that led to the establishment of true department stores. There were big stores, really big stores in the 1840s, 50s, and 60s. They just weren't subdivided into departments. So let's go to New York City and have a look here. We always like it here at the 100 Years and More show when we can prove Wikipedia incorrect. Wikipedia made the bold statement that there was no retail advertising for merchandise in America before 1831. So of course we went and found the Evening Post of New York of Saturday, December 20th, 1823. And it's the opening day of A.T. Stewart and Company. A.T. Stewart would go on to become one of the largest department stores in New York City and was functioning throughout the 19th century, and they even got big into mail order, even before Sears Roebuck. So it was a real story. This is their first ad. Here we go. A.T. Stewart, 283 Broadway, opposite Washington Hall, offers for sale elegant embroidered muslin dresses, ladies, misses, and infants, extra rich sorted caps, black ostrich feathers, Carolina plaids, etc., etc. ATS flatters himself as the above goods were bought for cash to be undersold by none in the city, which assertions he submits to those who may wish to purchase, respectfully inviting them to call, examine, and judge for themselves. Ads in the mid-19th century, I always asked you to call upon as if you were visiting a neighbor. All right, it was that the retail experience was much more refined. Now, A.T. Stewart and Company prospered. By 1846, they're opening up a new store, and it's a huge store. Advertisement in the Evening Post: A.T. Stewart and Company will open their new store on Monday, the 21st at 9 o'clock, with a stock of goods entirely new, which has been selected in Europe for the occasion by one of the partners. A.T. Stewart and Company will be most happy to receive visits of their friends, customers, and the public. That wasn't their last store. By 1868, they're opening up a block-long store on Broadway. It still stands at 280 Broadway, and it specialized in the importation of women's clothes. By the late 1860s, A.T. Stewart and Company formed part of what was referred to as the Ladies' Mile, which include Macy's, Lord & Taylor, and B. Altman and Company, along with Stewart. What was unique about the new store on Broadway is on the second floor they had a mirrored catwalk, and that allowed the women to try on the clothes and walk with the clothes on, all the while being completely surrounded by mirrors, so that they could see they could see what it looked on them in 360 degrees. Something that stores even in the 21st century don't have. Now, interesting thing when you're looking at advertisement in the mid-19th century, a couple of things came into play here. One, Queen Victoria's husband, Prince Albert, dies in the 1850s, and she goes into perpetual mourning. And there already was a tendency to say celebrate death, but there was a tendency to over exaggerate the mourning experience. And mourning goods, and I mean goods, not goods that you would wear in the AM. Mourning goods to memorialize death are a big part of the retail experience. Death is much more common, actually. In a 19th century city like New York, per 100,000 people, 3 times as many people will die then as die now. If you go back to my episode about St. Louis in 1876, we get into detail about what the causes of death are and what the mortality tables say. But people were far more familiar with death. And so you get ads like this in the New York Times on March 17th, 1857. This is Arnold Constable and Company, again, one of the big retailers at that time. Black crepe Moretta, black muslin, black alpaca, black gingham. I never even know there was black gingham. And they say here that all goods suitable for mourning are always on hand and for sale by Arnold & Constable and Company. An ad like that would be, it's certainly, since the advent of modern antibiotics and vaccines, you certainly don't have a celebration of mourning to that extent, for sure, in modern America. Now, when you carry a lot of merchandise, you sell a lot of merchandise, you're always subject to theft. And this is a funny little story here. Well, it's in the New York Times on April 7th, 1851. And it has to do with Arnold and Constable, the company we just talked about. Here's the article. Recovery of stolen property. Goods to the value of $2,000, which is like $60,000, which were stolen by Rogers, the clerk of Arnold and Constable, merchants of 62 Canal Street, who was arrested a few days since, have been recovered by the Fifth Ward Police. Well, what happened? Rogers alleges that the conduct of his wife, previous to the commission of the larcenies, drove him to desperation and induced him to pursue the course which led to his incarceration. So he's blaming it all on the wife, probably to the extent that she was making unreasonable demands for merchandise that he just couldn't afford, so he had to steal it. That's a lot of stuff, $60,000 worth of stuff. Business was prospering, and we get want ads in the New York Daily Herald of February 5th, 1853. Salesman wanted. 3 or 4 experienced retail silk salesmen apply before 10 a.m. at Arnold and Constable. So there's enough of demand that they need 3 or 4 salesmen, and there's enough of demand in silk, not cotton salesmen or wool salesmen. They want silk salesmen, and they are pretty sure that they're going to be able to hire 3 or 4 individuals that are experienced in the sale of silks. Now, child labor laws were not all they were cracked up to be at that point in time. We get this ad here in the New York Tribune on February 17th, 1853. Wanted, 2 or 3 boys 15 to 16 years of age to carry parcels. Apply before 10 a.m. or after 5 p.m. So, yeah, heaven forbid that the upper class matrons would have to carry their own parcels out to the carriages. So they're wanting to hire boys of 15 or 16 to do that for them. Now, not to be outdone, Arnold and Constable built their own palace. The ad reads, well, it's Thursday, March 5th, 1857, retail branch of their business in the New Marble Building, corner of Canal and Mercer Street. That becomes all the rage after they build their retail establishment. Marble becomes the material that sets aside the prime retailers from the also-rans. The palace, the Marble Palace, took up an entire city block from Broadway to Fifth Avenue. It was such a large building that it was noted in the New York Daily Herald on Monday, May 11th, 1868, that one of the most important projects in building in this regard to be developed this year is the block of new marble stores to be erected by Messrs. Arnold Constable and Company on Broadway, between 18th and 19th Street, and occupying half the front from street to street. The edifice will have a Broadway frontage of 90 feet in depth, on 19th Street 172 feet, and towards 18th Street 102 feet. They note that the first floor is going to be all made of iron. It'll be one of those iron fronts that you see in Lower Manhattan. And then everything above that, up to 90 feet, is all going to be marble. They put the heights they mention the heights of each of the individual stories. The basement is 13-foot ceiling heights, working its way up to 5th story ceiling heights of 18 feet. Quite a huge area establishment. And it says that there will be steam-powered elevators, and also it will be heated with steam. Certainly a modern and efficient building for the sale of retail merchandise. Now, in 1858, Macy's opens in New York, and if you go on Macy's website, they state that their opening was 1858. But Macy's is wrong. Macy's is not originally a New York store. It was originally a Massachusetts store. It opened a branch office in Manhattan in 1858, and here's the ad from that opening. New York Times, Thursday, November 25th, 1858. R.H. Macy is now opening at his new store, number 204 and 206 6th Avenue, one door below 14th Street. And they advertise that they have 1,000 French embroidered collars and 3,000 Scotch collars and 2,500 yards of fabric at 25 cents that are worth 50 cents, they say. We already mentioned that there's always the potential problem with theft. For the first time, you start hearing about an activity referred to as shoplifting. This is from the New York Daily Herald, Thursday, December 29th, 1870. Headline, Shoplifting, the recent arrest at Macy's. What the storekeepers think of the kleptomania business and the danger of leaving goods exposed as at a fair. So remember, they have not adopted the fixed price scheme yet in the New York City retail stores. They will in the 1870s. So this is still a situation here where people are haggling over goods, and I guess that opens up the opportunity for shoplifting even more. It states, the shopkeepers of this gay and festive city are just now in a terrible stew, if such a term is pardonable. A question discussed everywhere among them is, was Macy's right or wrong in having several ladies arrested on a charge of theft? Now remember that the patrons of these stores are upper middle class and upper class ladies for the most part. Now, and what's interesting on this one, when they go in and they interview the retail manager at Macy's, and she makes the admission that they've lost as much as $10,000 a year in shoplifting, and that the woman that they chose to have arrested, Mrs. Phelps, was only carrying 22 cents worth of candy when she was arrested. Now, Mrs. Phelps, that obviously wasn't the first time Mrs. Phelps had been involved in shoplifting, but she brought in the heavy hitters. Because she's an upper class person, she has contacts in the city, and she enlisted the help of the local newspapers. She even got Horace Greeley to come down and pitch on her behalf that she was an upstanding woman. But Macy's would have none of it and decided to make an example out of her so as to have some impact on the overall shoplifting problem they were having. And she was prosecuted and found guilty of theft. It doesn't mention what the punishment was, but it was probably a small fine. They're certainly not going to throw some upper society matron in jail over a 22-cent piece of candy. Interesting, though. Macy's admitted to the problem, but they also went down the street and talked to the security managers of the different department stores, and they all took the ostrich approach to shoplifting. With respect to Arnold and Constable, the response was this: "We are not troubled with thieves here, sir. Arnold and Constable's people know all their old customers, and when we see any strange or suspicious person in the store, we quietly inform them to walk out. We are our own detective and know all the suspicious persons much better than the detectives themselves." I guess they weren't much for having tourists come through or people that they didn't know. Apparently, according to this gentleman, if they didn't know you and your reputation, you were going to be shown the door. The next place they visited was Lord and Taylor, 1 block above Arnold and Constable. The reporter found Mr. Worm, the assistant superintendent. "I have been in the detective business and was of the detective firm of Warren and Whipple. I know what's going on, and none of those shoplifters can come here without me knowing about them. I don't think there are any virtuous ladies in the shoplifting line, but there are women who come in here wearing more antique and camel hair shawls, but they never get a chance to work the counters." Anyways, the other firms are all saying that it isn't a problem and it's only Macy's problem. Obviously, shoplifting is everybody's problem. Now, simultaneously with the development of the stores in New York City, trailing perhaps only in a few years, department stores, or stores of the type that will evolve into department stores, are opening up across the country. We've got Chicago. In 1857, Marshall Field moves there and begins working for Cooley, Farwell and Company. And by 1862, he's made a partner. It becomes the largest commercial establishment in Chicago. The business survives the Great Fire of 1871, and in 1881, Marshall Field buys out the remaining partner for $3 million, or $90 million today. And that partner, Mr. Leiter, says in the Chicago Tribune that he's going fishing. But in the Inter-Ocean, which was a newspaper in Chicago up until the 1920s, it notes on January 27th, 1881, Field, Leiter and Company. Yesterday, this title ceased to be, as Mr. Leiter retired from the firm. Under the style of Marshall Field and Company, the historic house will surpass itself. Such an idea as the dissolution of the firm of Field, Leiter and Company probably never entered the brain of the average Chicagoan until it was a fait accompli yesterday afternoon, because their retail dry goods palace on State Street and their immense wholesale store on Madison Street and their extensive stables and warehouse accommodations were marks ever before the eyes of the public of solidity, stability, and permanence. Nor will any of these things be affected by the change in the firm, for the entire business and all its branches and details will be carried on exactly as before, except perchance the new firm will endeavor to surpass the old one. So the Inter-Ocean is giving the store a glowing review and ensuring the public that it's going to continue in the future as it has in the past. Now, like most department store owners in the 19th century, Marshall Field became a scion of society in his city, and he used his great wealth not just to build himself mansions and travel the world, which he did, but also became to assist in major capital improvements in the city. If you've been to Chicago, you've seen the Field Museum of Natural History. He founded that with a $1 million donation, so the equivalent of $30 million. He eventually would give it, upon his death, another $8 million, or $250 million. And the Field Museum continues to be one of the finest American museums of natural history. He also, along with Rockefeller, founded the University of Chicago. Rockefeller provided the millions necessary for the construction of the original buildings, and Marshall Field donated all the land on which the University of Chicago now sits. So they gave back, and that's common throughout the experience, regardless of which city you're in. In Philadelphia, you got the Wanamaker family, and when he died in 1922, when John Wanamaker dies in 1922, his obituary, which ran across the country, outlines what he did for the retail experience in the United States and also for the community. Oh, Wanamaker! If you remember, that when we're going to try to make a Wanamaker drink at the end of this thing. And also, if you're a golfer, the Wanamaker Cup that's given to the winner of the PGA, and that was donated by the Wanamaker family in the 19 teens. Now, John Wanamaker led the creation of the department store as an institution in American life. At the outbreak of the Civil War in 1861, when he began business for himself in a humble way in Philadelphia, retail merchandising in this country was in a disorganized state. As it was. There were in those days no fixed selling prices for goods. Businesses then demanded a 13-hour day from all its employees. Customers spent hours price haggling with salesmen. Mr. Wanamaker was impressed with this waste of time, and to eliminate it, he became a pioneer in fixing a selling price for goods. as we've seen was done in Pittsburgh earlier. It was one of the beginnings of the many mercantile reforms which today are so generally followed that the present generation can scarcely find anywhere a trace of the old practices. Like nobody's haggling anymore. By the 1920s, everything's on a fixed price system in the United States. Now, he was always looking for better and newer ways of doing business. And aside from providing convenience for buyers and securing able management, Mr. Wanamaker paid great attention to the welfare of his employees, establishing among them many institutions for cultivating a spirit of comradeship, educating them to improve their earning capacity, and providing retirement of old employees on the retired pay, and creating a court of appeals to which they had an internal complaint department. One of the greatest tributes ever paid to an American merchant was that given to Mr. Wanamaker in the fall of 1911 on the 50th anniversary of his business career. 13,000 of his employees from both the New York and Philadelphia stores greeted him in his Philadelphia store and presented him with the house in which he was born. The actual house. And hopefully we got a photograph up on the screen right now, but they bought and transported the actual home in which he was born, the humble little wooden shack in which he was born. And they presented him also with a Jubilee book that each of the 13,000 employees had signed, wishing him happy birthday. Now, Wanamaker was one of the first retailers to take their show on the road and go across the country. Within a few years, he had stores in Chicago, St. Louis, Pittsburgh, Louisville, and Washington, D.C. His competition in Pittsburgh was the Kaufman family. Kaufman department stores, and if you recall, the Kaufmans are the family that commissioned Frank Lloyd Wright to build Falling Water, which you can go tour outside of Pittsburgh. And the Kaufman family, the Kaufman store, they like to refer to their stores in the Pittsburgh area. So that was their version of creative marketing, saying that because the store was big, we could offer lower prices. But Wanamaker was bigger, and he called his advertising in the Pittsburgh area was headed a big strike. Now for a jump at once to the front for the leadership of the fall business. We are satisfied the only way to trade is to give the biggest value for $1, and that's how we'll do it. It's a very short story. The manufacturers of this country and Europe for the last 6 months have been making, especially for us, nearly $1 million worth of fine cloth and trousering, and they go on to how they are able to present this at a big store in Washington and the biggest of all stores in Philadelphia. Now, perhaps, though, there's no better example of the department store in America in the 19th century than Gimbel's. Most people, I think, would think of Gimbel's as a New York store, maybe as a Philadelphia store, but it's not. It's a Milwaukee store. It opens in 1887 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Their ambition led to a Philadelphia store in 1894 and a New York store in 1910. By 1930s, Gimbel's had 7 giant flagship stores and 13 smaller stores across America, and they were selling the equivalent of $2.5 billion worth of merchandise. And they were the first store to have a Santa Claus parade. But just like all stores, the cracks began to show in the 1970s. The riots and civil disruptions of the 1960s had made a lot of people think that the downtowns were unsafe, and the big flagship stores struggled. They reconstituted themselves out in the malls, and those held on into the 90s. But the retail experience was being transformed in the 2000s by the internet. And as I said earlier, our alien overlord, Jeff Bezos, and his Bond villain wife have completely changed the way the retail experience is now experienced by humans in the United States of America. And I don't think that it's been for the better. It's the impersonal. You do get a lower price for inferior goods, but the impersonality of the whole thing, the removal of the human touch, I think is affecting the way people think and affecting basically the mental health of the community. It'd be nice if we could go back that way, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. The department store now, it's almost all gone. There are some niche ones that you're going to have to really, if you're going to go super high end, or there may perhaps with an immigrant experience, there'll be a rebound in wanting more personal service. But as it stands right now, it looks like our department stores are on their last leg. But we can always look back at the past, at the glorious past of department stores, at the innovative men and women who forged the retail experience and made the United States the leader of the world. Heck, even in a city like London, their first department store is Selfridges, which is an American store. It's unfortunate that it's come to this, but that's, you can't stop progress, but we can go back and look at and pay homage to D.W. Evans of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, who in 1870 opened up the first department store. There should be a statue, if there's not, of D.W. Evans in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he should be in, if there is such a thing, the Retail Hall of Fame. Now, let's go look at making ourselves a Wanamaker milk punch. Remember, punches were really popular in the 18th and 17th century. If you remember It's a Wonderful Life, Clarence orders a punch at the bar right before he gets punched out near the end of the movie. Punches were big communal drinks, and this is one here. This certainly is one. To make it, you're going to need the peels of 3 lemons, 3/4 cup of lemon juice, a cup of simple syrup, 2 cups of rum, a cup of bourbon. You heat the milk to a steam. You don't boil, but you heat it, you milk to a steam, and then you add the lemon juice and the lemon peels, and that'll curdle the milk. All right. We started here with how much milk did we have here? We started here. Oh, sorry. We started here with 2 cups of whole milk. You'll curdle the milk, and then what you have to do is then you have to use a straining process to clarify the mixture. You strain the curdling milk and spirits through a strainer, through a cheesecloth, and finally through a coffee filter, and then it'll turn clear. So you'll end up with a drink that is primarily rum and bourbon with simple syrup and milk. It'll turn into a clear liquid, and that can be used. 3 ounces of that can be used to make a drink, and you would mix that over top of ice and garnish with a cinnamon and nutmeg. So there you are. We've got a Wanamaker milk punch. It's one of the more complicated drinks that you could make, but probably one of the more rewarding ones. I'll try it this Christmas. Now, again, if we've lasted this far, we'd love it if you could like and subscribe. We want to build the channel and be able to bring you more interesting facts, figures, and people from 100 years and more ago. All right? Okay, take care, everybody. We'll see you down the road next week. All right.